And welcome to another edition of Connect Live here on Comcast. Ashley Brown with you tonight, and we've got some great guests lined up. And we're going to start things off talking a little boxing, as we tend to do on occasion here in Augusta. We're very proud of our boxing with the Augusta Boxing Club and several members of the Augusta Boxing Club who have gone on to professional careers. We'll talk boxing a little bit tonight, and that's what we're going to do to start things off. Lenny Pulley joins us. Len is with Intel Audits, an energy company, and but he's been an advisor to the Augusta Boxing Club for quite some time. Len, welcome to the show, first off.
Thank you for having me.
Now, how does someone in your line of work, Intel Audits in the energy business, how did you get involved with the Augusta Boxing Club?
Well, my sons, I got them involved in boxing. It was, you know, I'd been involved in it as a youth, and it was, you know, great exercise and great sport. I loved the sport, so I signed my sons up, and that's how I started.
That's how you got involved?
Yeah.
Now, how long have you been involved with the Augusta Boxing Club?
It's been over 10 years.
Over 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, you guys have a huge event coming up in just a few days, the 25th, 26th, and 27th at May Park, starting at 7 o'clock each night. It's the Summer Boxing Classic, Comcast and Ringside Summer Boxing Classic. This is a big, big event. For those folks that are listening in that don't know as much about boxing, you've got folks coming from all over the country and a few from out of the country, right?
Right. We're going to have an international flavor to it this year with the Canadians bringing some teams down. So it'll be.
And what's
really
what are the age groups? What are we looking at?
It'll be 9 to 16. 9 to 16 years old.
9 to 16-year-olds. Now, you know, the way boxing is set up, if you're one of these amateur, you know, if you're an amateur fighter, an up-and-coming guy, this is the type of event you're going to go to show yourself off. You know, you all the time hear about guys winning golden gloves, silver gloves, the different levels.
Right.
This is one of the events that is certainly circled on a lot of the boxing clubs' calendars around the Southeast for sure.
Exactly. And it's big also because this is the only event where the younger kids can win a national title, the 9 through 14-year-olds. Because the other events, you have to be 15 or above to go to those events
to win a national
championship, right? But they formed this event for that purpose, so they could have the younger kids compete for a national title.
Yeah,
and that's 9 through 14.
A little bit of bragging rights. Well, the other sports, you know, football and basketball these days, they're starting to recruit kids that are, you know, 9, 10 years old. We might as well have a national champion in boxing.
Now, younger and younger.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mentioned the proud history of the Augusta Boxing Club and some of the success we've had going back to Vernon Forrest, Ricky Jones. They've had some great fighters come through. And obviously, one of the big reasons is Tom Raitis. Talk a little bit about him, and because I think Tom Raitis is one of those guys that's probably more famous and more popular maybe outside of the area than he is even in Augusta when you talk boxing. He's well known around the country, in the world for that matter, in boxing circles. Talk about Tom Raitis and his influence.
Absolutely. I mean, he's been doing it for over 30 years. He has a great deal of knowledge, and he passes that knowledge on. He's tough. He deals with the kids in the way a coach should, an amateur coach should. And I think, you know, he earns a lot of respect from the boxers in the boxing club as well as other boxing clubs. And he puts on great events, such as this one that's coming up, Summer Classic. He puts on the best events than anybody around the country that I've ever seen.
Well, he's been, for a couple of reasons. One, he's been at it for so long.
Right.
He's already had a chance to work out the kinks and the problems, you know, over the years of experience. But he's also been to so many events and been involved in such huge events all the way up to the Olympic Games. He's been involved in so much that he's seen it all. You know, none of this is going to be a shock or a surprise to him. So he gives these, it's obvious that the kids respect him because they know that he's been at the highest possible level where they're trying to get.
Right, and he's trained these athletes you're talking about, and also Ray Whitfield, another one that he's trained. So he earns a lot of respect from the people in the sport.
Yeah, that's who I wanted to go into next was Ray Whitfield. When you talk about great boxers from Augusta, you got to talk about Stingray. Ray Whitfield is not only a great boxer, obviously anybody that's seen him box knows that, but he's really gaining a reputation in the area for being a great spokesperson for the sport, for the Augusta Boxing Club. And you want to talk about somebody that's giving back. You told me something off air that Ray's doing. I didn't even know he was doing. He's not only continuing his career as a boxer, but he's also lending a hand coaching some of the boxers at the Augusta Boxing Club.
He does. He coaches down there. I mean, he's a gym rat. He's constantly in the gym, and he loves coaching the younger boxers, teaching them what he's learned and pushing them and giving them the advice, you know, not just about boxing, but other things and how to carry those attributes onto adulthood. And you don't see many professional athletes do that dedicate their time to it like that. I mean, he's in there 4 or 5 hours a day probably more than that,
Yeah.
training these young athletes to excel like he's excelled.
On top of the time that he's probably running himself
Exactly,
and working out himself.
Well, he
just
comes in
stay
before then to do all that.
Yeah, to do his.
He does that, then he does
It's
the training of the kids.
amazing. Now, you talk about the fact that your sons are involved in boxing, and you got them involved in it. One thing I found when I was a kid growing up, sports did a lot of things for me. One, it kept me out of trouble. You know, it occupied my time. It taught me so much about having to manage your time. You know, you got to be disciplined, obviously, to be successful in any sport. But I think disciplining with your time, knowing that you've got to work out this time, you've got to, you know, when you're in school, part of the time most of these kids are right now. It's summertime, obviously, but when they're in school, they've got to manage their time. Did you see that happen with your kids?
I did. Boxing is a sport that requires a great deal of training. I mean, I've never seen a sport, and I've been involved just about all the major ones, including boxing, and it involves a great deal of self-discipline and work ethic. And those are the kind of things you learn in boxing that we try to get these kids to take over into the educational side of their life and other aspects of their life, which is important. Because, you know, very few of these kids will be professional athletes. So we emphasize them to bring those attributes over into educational and other things. And it teaches that, and you have to have that strong work ethic and discipline, and it builds a great deal of self-confidence also. And you have to have that work ethic to be successful as a boxer. Yeah. And if you learn that, that'll help you in other aspects of your life.
Oh, the self-confidence thing is dead on. I mean, you know, as a kid, I was so shy, and I really started to kind of break out of it in middle school. And it's no coincidence that that's when I started playing team sports and playing that sport and being around the guys and kind of being able to break out of the shell in a small group helped me to gradually break out of it in a big group. So I can see that. I can see that as well. And you a lot of times hear coaches say when you talk about a kid, when he talks about one of his athletes, one of his players, one of his boxers, whatever it may be, he'll say, well, that kid's going to be successful no matter what he does. Again, the coach sees that work ethic, he sees how he handles himself, and it does carry over into whatever you decide to do in life, whether you go into working in the energy business, whether you go into radio, TV, whatever it may be.
Right, exactly. And they need to, and one thing you need to emphasize as a coach with these kids or advisor, whatever you are, to use those attributes we've been talking about in your education and in your, you know, whatever your personal life. Not just leave it there with the sport, but try to carry it over to those other areas of your life.
Absolutely.
And your confidence is huge in boxing, obviously.
Yeah, well, you ain't gonna get in the ring. You're not gonna get in the ring if you're not.
I'm not, you know, I'm saying it's not for other sports, any sport.
Absolutely. We're talking with Lenny Pulley, and Len is here to give us some details on a great event coming up starting this Thursday, 7 o'clock, May Park. And it's the Comcast Ringside Summer Boxing Classic. Now, we mentioned that we've got kids coming from all over the country, some from Canada. You're going to get to see great boxing. What's the cost for the folks that want to come out and see the event?
$10 for adults, $5 for kids up to 15, and $20 for ringside tickets. If you want to be up real close.
That's right. So you got to, and if you can't make it out Thursday or Friday, Saturday, just plan on at least one night. We'd love for you to be out all 3 nights, but you can come either night. $20 for a ringside seat for a Thursday night or a Friday night or a Saturday night. What a great deal. Now, again, you also, I think it's great that you got the discounted prices for kids 15 and under. A lot of times you hear like 4 and under, 5 and under. You want the teenagers to come out and watch this thing.
We do.
Event.
This is a family event, too. If there's anybody who's never been to one of these events, they'll love it. You know, the adults love boxing, but kids really love it. They go one time, they're going to want to come back. So we want those kids to come in there. We have a lot of kids, and it's a very much a family event there. There's a lot of kids there. You know, we have concession stand there. We have a raffle where you can win a jacket. Ringside sets up an area where they sell T-shirts and so forth. And there, you know, then you have the good action with the boxing.
And speaking of the boxing, not only will we have boxers from all over the country in Canada, but we're also going to have a lot of our very own. 7 boxers from the Augusta Boxing Club competing?
7 boxers from the Augusta Boxing Club. We'll have Roman Pulley, let's see, Nicholas Torrance, Doc Robinson, Desmond Lyons, Kiana KJ, and K. John Green. 3.
Now, I heard a Pulley in there. That's one of your
my
sons.
son.
Roman Pulley?
Roman Pulley, yes.
Now, how old is he?
He's 15.
And what weight class is he set up in?
He'll be boxing at the 119.
119.
weight class.
Now, folks, that if you don't follow amateur boxing, that 119, that 125, those classes are really, really tough. I mean, those are always
They
kind of
are.
the most competitive ones, it seems. How's he been doing so far with it?
He's had a rough time lately.
Yeah.
He's been boxing since he was 5 years old.
He's been at it a
so
while
he's
then,
had his ups and downs. He's been to the nationals. He's had his times where he's won a lot of fights and then times where you don't. So like any sport, you have to be able to take the good with the bad. And that's why we lose, well, not just boxing, but other sports. When you start having trouble, a lot of boxers will drop out.
Yeah,
And
I'm not good enough. That's the test,
they think
really.
that.
Yeah.
That's the test, and they're the kind of things they need, the ability to keep driving on. You learn that, and then you carry it on to the next phase of your life, too.
That's right,
So
that's
another
right.
one of those attributes we were talking about that you learn through boxing.
So you'll have a chance, folks, to see perhaps one of the great, who knows, maybe a world champion down the road. We've had two from the Augusta area. I say two. We've actually got three when you throw Paul Williams in there from Aiken.
True, right.
Paul, of course, not necessarily
boxer.
member of the Augusta Boxing Club, but certainly does the area proud. And Ray Whitfield, you can't say enough about him. Vernon Forrest, we can go up and down the list, and even Ray Mercer. I mean, we've had a lot of guys. What do you make of it? Why has Augusta been sort of a hotbed? Because most towns or cities our size haven't had the success that we've had on the amateur level, certainly, and then even on the pro level. What do you make of it? Is it Tom Moritas and his influence that has been big? Is it the fact that we've got a lot of the, in the inner city, we've got a lot of kids that maybe needed that direction and steering them into boxing? What is it?
I would attribute it to Tom Moritas. I really would. And there's Pancho Carter also won a
No, that's right. Yeah,
world title.
His son, by the way, was a heck of a basketball player who recently
Yeah.
finished up over at Butler High School.
Right.
Yeah.
But, Tom formed a great organization. He really did. He put the effort into it. And this is the only boxing club that I've ever seen that it doesn't cost for the kids. The competitive kids, when they come into box, it's free of charge.
See, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So you don't have that. I've never found another boxing club that does that.
Yeah.
So it brings in those kids that normally may not have come into box because couldn't afford it, or, but that ability to do it for free through sponsorship and so forth helps us to bring in more athletes that normally may not have come around. So I think that helps, and we just have good athletes in Augusta.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, that's true. Look at the other sports for that matter. Well, that's even more reason, folks, you should get out there and support this event. It's the Comcast Ringside Summer Boxing Classic. It'll be going on at May Park this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 7 p.m. start time each night. Ringside seats for each night. You can go Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Ringside seats, $20 per night. Or you can get $10 tickets for adults, $5 for kids all the way up to 15 years old. So bring the entire family out for a great night of competitive boxing. You get to see some great fighters, and you get to see some kids. I know on the Augusta side for sure, it's interesting to see the sportsmanship that's involved. This is a sport where you're going out there and you're trying to tear your opponent up, but yet the sportsmanship at a boxing event is probably better than any other sport.
It is, and I've been involved in other sports. I was a baseball coach for 10 years also.
Yeah.
And the sportsmanship in boxing excels above the others, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Though I love the other sports, and don't get me wrong. But a lot of people would think the opposite because it's a
They are trying.
they're
It's
fighting.
so competitive. They're trying to hit each other.
Right.
But again, I think it's the fact that you immediately gain respect when you get in the ring from your opponent.
Right.
And then if you certainly put on a good fight, there's even more respect there. So whether win or lose, you do see that from the kids, and no matter how young. I mean, it's interesting. The ones I've been to, I've been kind of overwhelmed because usually when a young kid loses or gets beat, they're not happy. But in boxing, it seems they handle it even better. And that obviously you're going to have individual instances where that might not be the case. But I've been very impressed with what I've seen, whether it be the Augusta Boxing Club or these bigger events that you guys have helped put on. And what about as far as what level, the winners at this event? Are these kids that are possibly going to compete for a national Golden Gloves, a national, other national honors in addition to this?
Well, yes, the ones who can win at this
level,
event
that's kind of
very
a
well
stepping
could
stone
win,
for
very well could win at the other events.
Yeah,
Yes.
and who knows, maybe Olympic Games one day, that kind of thing.
We
We
could see
need it.
some Olympians
The U.S.
here.
needs some Olympians
We do.
to
We've
win.
had some trouble in the Olympics, and there's a variety of reasons, and Tom would be best to discuss that. But we could
know
talk
one
an
of them.
hour
I
about
was
some of the
gonna say,
reasons
we
for
could
that.
do a whole other show. I think one of them, first off, and it's a problem we've got in some other sports, baseball predominantly for years, is that a lot of the guys are pros in the other. You know, you take Brazil, you're battling guys who are pros in their other countries. Russia,
Yeah.
you know, we went through that in baseball and basketball, and that's why eventually we came up with the dream team, because we're putting amateur kids against these guys that are professionals.
Right.
So you're obviously not going to have as much success, and who knows? Hopefully the Americans will be back, because I remember when I was coming up. You know, watching some of the great, we had some amazing boxers come through the amateur ranks. Obviously, Sugar Ray Leonard, you can go back that far. But even Evander Holyfield, who was robbed in the Olympics. We've had several robbed in the Olympics, because wasn't Roy Jones was another one, wasn't he? Didn't he beat the guy pretty badly and end up losing? Evander's was on a punch after the bell. But we could go on and on about that. The bottom line, we've got some great boxers here. You mentioned 7 from the Augusta area. Now, is that kind of the norm each year? Has it been that you have that many, or is this a good amount?
Well, it differs.
It differs.
Sometimes less, sometimes more.
Depending on...
That's about average, I
What are the
guess.
qualifications? Is it just a matter of Tom Ryder saying, hey, I think this kid's ready? I think this guy's ready for this level.
Right.
Maybe this kid needs a little more seasoning. Is that basically what the deciding measure is?
Exactly. It's experience. You need to have some experience to compete in this event. So these athletes we have competing in it have the experience to compete, and Tom and Ray get together and decide which kids that we believe can win. And they will not put someone in this event if they don't think they can win.
Then compete at this
Right.
level. Now, your son Roman, 15 years old, he's right at that stepping level now, because he's going up from where,
Right.
you know, 9 to 14, as you mentioned, this event's for them to win an act. But once you get to that 15 is where it gets really, really serious. It already was, obviously, but 15 is really that stepping stone. Is that something, am I right on that?
Right. Well, then you're getting close to the open division. Once you get to the open division, that's when you're starting to look towards Olympics and national open division Golden Gloves, which is one of the biggest events to win besides the Olympics. So yes, you're getting up there where you're really competing with some very qualified boxers, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
very experienced
some
boxers.
guys that if you beat, if you beat, that's a great measure where you might can go, and if you
Right.
lose to them, there's no shame in it. You got some good
That's
guys.
right.
I remember Vernon Forrest, who I knew growing up, who was a member of the Augusta Boxing Club at the time when he was an amateur. I remember at one point his amateur record was like 112-5, or 112 wins and 5 losses. I just remember thinking, that is astonishing. But keep in mind, he lost 5 times. I mean, this is a guy that was a world champion, and he lost 5 times as an amateur, and that's one of the best records you can have.
That's a very good amateur
I was going to
record.
say,
Very good amateur
yeah.
record.
You think about the guys who've lost 10, 20, 30 times as an amateur that go on to win championships. So as you said, you can't give up. If this is something you really love and you really want to pursue.
Yeah. Nobody goes undefeated in amateur boxing.
Mike Tyson didn't. Mike Tyson didn't. Even that was before he got married and had all the Robin Givens and all the outside stuff.
Right.
Yeah, he got beat as an amateur. Matter of fact, didn't Mitch Green beat him, I think, as an amateur? Somebody beat him, but he came back and beat as a pro. I forget. But yeah, Tyson wasn't undefeated. And he was, he was a heavyweight champ at, what, 20 years old.
And it's a different system. The amateur system is different. You
It's
have
points,
a different point
Explain
system,
that a little
right.
bit for the folks that are out there that are watching the show that might want to come to the event. It is different because it's a more tactical strategy involved in the amateur fighting than in the professional
Right.
ranks.
Yeah, it's landing punches basically. I mean, they count the number of punches you land. So if you knock somebody down, it's not like the pro system where it's a 10-8 round.
Yeah.
That punch just counts as 1 point. So it
See,
doesn't
really?
matter,
Okay.
just 1 point. It's not, in the pro system, they look at style and how hard the punches, power
How
punches,
hurt
and
the
all
other guy
that.
is. And
Yeah,
that kind of
they'll
thing.
take that into effect, obviously. But in amateur boxing, it's not like that.
Yeah.
And it sometimes you can have an amateur boxer that doesn't do great as an amateur, but do great as a pro.
And vice versa. For
Or
that
vice
matter.
versa,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Paul Williams is that way. I mean, he wasn't a great amateur boxer, but
Yeah.
was obviously a great
Obviously, a
pro.
great pro. Now, I think Vernon, in his case, and maybe Ray to some extent, in Vernon's case, he was such a good tactical fighter that it took him a while to maybe, as a pro, learn that it was a different system because he was so good at the points system.
Right.
And a lot of it was people didn't really want to fight him much because, like Paul Williams, he was so tall and kind of an awkward fight for a lot of guys. Now,
Right.
in Ray's case, I think Ray's a guy who's been good at both. I think his style, he's got the style points and the quickness that makes you look good. Sometimes those fighters that are so super quick,
Yeah.
Obviously Pacquiao's somebody that stands out. He's just so quick. He looks like a blur out there.
Right, very good
Whitfield,
boxer.
I was going to say Whitfield is similar to that. He's so fast
Right.
that he has the style side, but he's got that great background in grooming in the Augusta Boxing Club, where as an amateur, he was very successful as well.
Yeah, anybody who has excelled at the amateur level, like Ray has, or other people we were just talking about, who've won those national events and some of the international events, they're going to be good as a pro boxer.
Yeah.
You know, it just depends on how good is a pro.
Exactly. How more they can develop and keep growing, because you got to keep getting better, because those other guys are working hard too to get better.
Right.
You got to stay ahead of the competition.
It's a point system too in amateur boxing. It's kind of hurt us in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Because well, I don't want to get into it because we get pretty deep into it. You know, the computer scoring system would be nice to have at every event where our boxers get used to that system and have it, you know, and be ready to fight that style on the
international
in the Olympics.
In the Olympic Games.
And again, Tom would be.
We may have to do another show, have Tom on, and let him go through this and figure out what the heck we need to do to
Tom's
get
probably watching this. Oh no!
Hopefully we'll have a few of our five. We've got 7 locals that we'll keep an eye on. Hopefully, who knows, one of those guys one day will be in the Olympic Games. But I guarantee you, if you come out to this event, you're going to see some guys that will be competing for spots on the Olympic team at some point in their career, because you've got some of the best from ages, again, 9 through all the way up to 16,
9
right?
to 16.
9 to 16-year-olds at this event. It's the Comcast Ringside Summer Boxing Classic. Len Pulley is with us to talk a little bit about it. Any final thoughts you want to let the folks know about the event? Because we've got everything. You got the concessions. You've got, if you want some of the ringside gear, they're going to have that available.
Right.
It is a great, it's good for the Augusta Boxing Club to get out there and support these events. Again, they provide not only a chance for kids to learn boxing, but learn about life. Tom Moraitis is a great mentor for these kids, and it's free of charge, as he said. These competitive guys can come in free of charge and get it done. So I just think it's a phenomenal venue for some of these kids. And a lot of times it's kids who are in a tough family life, or maybe a broken home, where Tom is really assisting them. So come on out and support it. It's the Comcast Ringside Summer Boxing Classic at May Park this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Admission is $10 per day for adults, $5 for kids up to 15. If you want ringside seats, just $20. Lynn, you can't beat that deal.
You can't. I mean, people always say, well, we need more events, more athletic events in Augusta. Well, this is it.
There you go.
If you've never been to a boxing match, come out there. There'll be, 20-some fights a night.
So. 20 fights a night. You can't beat it. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a quick time out. We're going to come back with more in just a moment here on Comcast Connect Live. Is that good?